on this computer. And the reason why is that I actually have quite a bank of really intriguing questions that I must say have tested the limits of my intelligence. So I may not make sense at all, because that's what happens when you don't entirely understand what's going on around you. But we'll see. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And I have put them on a deck, and I'll sort of and Nick, your question was like quite a long one, and with lots of, so I've cut it into sections, because otherwise it becomes like
excellent.
you know, can't read them. No one won't read the whole thing. So I'll go through it.
Takes a lifetime,
yes.
ultimately.
Right. So the first question was from our friend Hanif Vidya from Nairobi. So Hanif asked, I spoke about good thoughts, dhikr, the internal beautiful dialogue that one has with their Lord, or prayer. Then there are some negative thoughts, the ones from nafs and the ones from shaitan. When all these transcend, are the bad ones filtered before they reach our Lord? And what is the state of both? So this is the first one that stumped me, because I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think Hanif is on the call. I'm not entirely sure what Hanif meant here. So I'm going to give it a bash. I'm going to sort of talk in the general direction of what I think he's asking. So we speak about our internal dialogue as the ongoing chatter that goes on. That's not verbal. It's actually it's thought. So it's imagery. It is verbal. It's sometimes even lines of text that go on the inside that that keep our attention occupied. Now, from one point of view, it doesn't matter whether that internal dialogue is positive or negative. And I'm assuming positive meaning life-affirming and sort of rooted in a good opinion of Allah and a good opinion of the world, and sort of reciting His names and all of that. And sort of negative being dark thoughts that are either about sort of relate either to sort of one wants, you know, what one is trying to kind of acquire in the world, and others relating to greed of some sort, or power, or what one's trying to avoid. So anything relating to insecurity or fear. And I guess you can say that there's these two classes of internal dialogue. There's positive internal dialogue and negative internal dialogue. But you have to understand that in the first instance, there are both internal dialogue. And insofar as they're both internal dialogue, they both have, in a sense, the same effect on your consciousness, because they put a filter between you and your experience. The noise that goes on the inside puts a veil between you and the world, and I wouldn't even want to call it the world, but that which you experience, because a lot of our experience, the sort of experience that we're really interested in Tasawwuf, is the experience that sort of arises from the inside, which is perfectly legitimate experience, but it doesn't necessarily have a physiological stimulus associated with it. So the more noise you have, the less you experience, and the less, and particularly in terms of your inner reality, the less you experience the proximity of the Rabb. He's closer to us than our jugular vein. This is not just an assertion on the lips. This is a first-hand experience. The quieter you get, the closer you feel His presence. The more you're thinking, the less you feel that presence. And it really doesn't matter from one point of view whether it's good thoughts or bad thoughts. Those thoughts form a layer. It's like a veiling between you and the experience. It's literally you're putting a veil between you and experience. However, there's certain thoughts that make it easy to get quiet, because clearly this silencing of the internal dialogue is also related with a deeply peaceful state, a quiet state. And what creates lots of internal dialogue is an agitated state. There's certain thoughts that you can have that allow you to quieten, and there's certain thoughts that you can have that agitate you. And if you're constantly reminding yourself about the injury that's been done to you and the terror that you have about what's going to happen and the sky falling on your head, it's very difficult to get off that treadmill. But if the nature of your internal dialogue is one where you are assuring yourself that what you have is the best that could have happened. In other words, your description of what's happened prior to this is rooted in a sense of gratitude. And you're therefore looking at the future in trust. That has a quietening effect on your internal dialogue. So you can say there's such a thing as negative internal dialogue and positive internal dialogue. Negative internal dialogue produces agitation and produces a lot of thinking. Positive internal dialogue reduces agitation and therefore reduces the amount of thinking that you have. But that's as much as I can do with this question. I don't know what else to do with this question. And if somebody thinks I should have a different angle on what I've said, because I don't think I entirely understand the question. And I must just say, that's not untrue for most of the questions that came this time. I got stumped. So the next question is, the person sent this to me anonymously, and therefore I'm going to put the person as anonymous. So I'll read it first, and then I'll. Can I just ask what happens when I pause the share? Do you then only see me, or do you still see the screen?
Still see the screen.
You still see the screen, okay. All right, then I'll read it, then I'll stop the share. Then I'll read it first, and then I'll stop the share. So the summary of the question is this: how could one have the dunya and asbab, for that matter? What I understand by asbab, and forgive me if I'm incorrect, is the whole issue of cause and effect, causation. How could one have the dunya and asbab, for that matter, in one's hand and not in one's heart? How can one truly rely on Allah and Allah alone? The detailed background to the question pertains to how one can refrain from relying in their heart on the world of cause and effect. I ask from the vantage point of experiencing a long-term illness, which is long COVID, where one needs to experiment with new medications and keep an eye out for what might help. I recognize that asbab are the creations of Allah and that we are commanded to deploy them as we need to, and also to seek healing. I find it more challenging to keep them out of one's heart, and that is not to have any reliance on them in that sense, but only to rely on Allah. Ideally, I would hope that following the asbab could be an act of worship if one's intention is in that direction. However, despite any theoretical knowledge, I still feel that they slip into my heart as I look for the next promising treatment for long COVID. Would be there any way to any frame of mind that perhaps help in making sure that asbab are in one's hands and not in one's heart? That's a beautiful question, and I must say, I mean, I've not had this ailment, and I've not been faced with a long-term illness like this. So please take this as speculative, so that in a sense I am engaging territory which is a bit speculative for me. But we have indicated that there's two ways of being in the world. And there's a way of being that you can call consistent with predatory attention, which is about achieving outcomes. That's the world of cause and effect. I do this in order to get that. The nature of the internal dialogue of a person who's doing that is judgmental, because they're constantly evaluating what fits or what doesn't fit, whatever criteria that they hold on to the world. There's another way of being, which is not about predatory attention, it's about receptive attention. And receptive attention basically says, is really concerned not with what you're trying to get, but about understanding what's coming to you. It is a kinder way of looking at the world. And we've described the difference between the two as framed in the difference between these two phrases. It's like saying, if you're describing somebody's behavior as, he's looking at me, or you're framing the person's behavior as he's listening to me. The emotional experience of those two different behaviors is quite a contrast. If he's looking at me, that's quite threatening because it's predatory. He's sort of trying to get something out. Whether he's listening to me is allowing me into him. It's a more open use of his attention. So we have these two ways of using our attention. The first is predatory, and the second is receptive. What's very important about predatory attention is that it's all about cause and effect. It's all about judgment. It's all about trying to manage manage things into the future. Whereas receptive attention isn't so much about what you're trying to get. It's more concerned with what's coming towards you. So we said that, a metaphor for this is to think about the difference in the eye structure of predatory animals and prey animals. Predatory animals have their eyes in front of their head so that they can have binocular vision, so that they can see depth and therefore plot into the future to get what they want. Whereas a prey animal's eyes are on the sides of its head, because the prey animal is far more concerned with what's coming towards it than what it is going towards. So that's what receptive attention does. The character in the internal dialogue of receptive attention is not judgmental, it's curious. Which means I look at the same phenomenon, but it's in a playful way. I'm not looking at it from the point of view that I'm now doing this to fix the matter. When you claim to believe, then by definition you are saying all outcomes in the hands of Allah. He's the master of outcomes. You also then, by definition, foregoing your own ability, you're foregoing your own conviction that you can manage the outcome. But that doesn't mean you're not allowed to play. You're not allowed to play with the world that you experience. That is this going to work? Is that going to work? Is that all the time understanding that that whatever the thing is that does work is still going to happen by his ingenuity and not yours. So I would say that would be my first take on this matter. It is because there's a desperation in how the question is phrased. Like, how do I stop having this anxiety about managing the affair? So I would suggest a possible way of doing that is to have is to act on the conviction that if the outcome is destined for you, it will come to you, and it's your job to enjoy the ride, to enjoy the journey, to enjoy the scene as it's passing you, rather than that outcome of the health that you're trying to get, so that you start experiencing your condition in a more curious kind of engagement rather than in a judgmental or predatory sense. Yeah, so that I think that would be my principal sort of response to the question, and I don't know if that's been helpful at all. If anybody thinks it hasn't, or would like to explore something further, then we can do that. So let's just go back to the question again and see if anything else comes to me. There you go. How can one have dunya in one's hand and not in one's heart? How could one truly rely on Allah and not Allah alone? Oh, there is a second thing that comes to me with this. And that is, I mean, my experience of things is that big openings happen when I've exhausted my own ability to be in charge of something and I've given up. I've literally just taken my hands off the wheel. Now it's not been with a health crisis like this, but when I get to the point when I've tried my level best, I've exhausted all of my ingenuity, and I recognize I've come to the limit of my capacity, and I give up. Now, very often, it is when that happens that the thing that I've been doing works. So it's not denying that what I didn't necessarily have an effect, but it's almost as if I had to, at some level, capitulate on the assumption that I can make the thing happen, that enabled it to happen. Yeah, so I think that's what I would consider doing if I were in the situation that this person's describing. So,
can I ask something?
Yes, please, Hannah.
From that aspect, it would then be better the sooner you could what's it called? Give up.
Capitulate, yeah, give up.
Yeah. But would it be authentic if one sort of decides to? No.
Because you see, you have to. So there's a metaphor for this in horse whispering. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of horse whispering at all. It's this, there's kind of, in my generation, we used to watch Western movies, and there was this thing about how you broke a horse, and it was an immensely violent affair with a person backing this horse and the horse trying its level best to throw the person off until the horse literally had its spirit broken. That's why I call it breaking the horse, and then it stopped fighting. But there's another way of, if you like, turning a wild horse into a rideable animal, which is not about breaking its spirit, but actually working with it. And that's what horse whisperers do. And what horse whisperers do is they actually work with this thing of receptive and predatory attention. They do a very interesting thing. They go into the corral where there's this wild Mustang, and they look at it. Now, a prey animal doesn't like being looked at by a predator. That kind of makes sense. So the horse finds the person looking at it very unpleasant, and the horse tries to get out of the way. And the person just quietly walks after it and keeps on looking at it, and the horse moves away. And then there comes a point where the horse whisperer suddenly withdraws his attention, and he looks away from the horse. The horse can't stand that. They literally come up and they submit. And the behavior of it in a horse is that it licks its lips. It's almost like saying, well, aren't I interesting anymore? Don't you want me anymore? But so there has to be the first commitment of the attention, the desire for the outcome. And if that isn't there with real passion, with real commitment, then the second piece of the giving up doesn't work. I mean, it's almost like you have to create this vacuum, Then when you give up, the thing comes. So I think it's very much like that. I think if you haven't striven, So this is not laziness. This is not lassitude. This is not saying, well, do nothing at all and kind of, you know, in Afrikaans we say God's water oor God's akker. That's God's water over God's acre. I mean, you know, just I do nothing. I take my hands off the wheel. Strive to the point where you give up and then see what happens. And the magic is in once you've striven and you've taken your hands and you're still watching, you're seeing what's happening with curiosity. Is that good enough, Anna?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Right, so I need to share again here.
Or sorry, can I ask one more thing?
Yes, certainly.
So, because it feels like it would almost be one's duty to sort of try everything. I think it's a social sort of learning. Or would it be completely individual?
I have a visceral reaction to that word, like I have a visceral reaction to the idea of good people.
Yeah, I can understand that. Mm-hmm.
Good people think they know how the world works. And they're busy fixing everything.
Mm. No, it has to do with fixing, doing what you can to fix.
So now, and this is always a contentious matter because then people think I'm saying no, but don't do your duty. And I don't think that's true. I mean, I do think you should feed the children, take the dog for a walk. You know, you should do the things that you need to do, you must do, but not in the spirit of being a good person.
Go on my back, like a little piggyback.
So I'm just moving this. But sort of in the spirit of I'm now in the process of kind of giving it my best shot so that I can realize once I've let, you know, it's not in the spirit of being a dutiful person. It's in the spirit of having an experimental engagement with your life. You know, is this, let's see, does it work? Doesn't it work? Yeah.
It's the duty that's the problem.
It's the duty that's the problem, and I don't think that the endeavor that we're busy with is really, it has a light touch on guilt. It has a light touch on duty. It has a light touch on the pursuit of being good, because all of those things presume that you can be good enough and that you can earn something. We're not here to be good enough and earn anything. We're here to witness that he is the most extraordinary of what is extraordinary, that he is the most stupendous master of all outcomes, not as an assertion that's been given to us in a piece of Arabic text, but as a first-hand experience. So, you know, we had some people who came to visit us in the Zawia in the week, a group of 3 tablighis, you know, and I'm sure you all kind of know the experience. So we're sitting, we've done Dhuhr, we've just done the normal dhikr that we do after Dhuhr. And these good people pulled us over the coals volubly because we were doing something which in their view was a bid'ah, was an innovation, this dhikr, you know, and they were obviously thinking that this is appropriate because they were being good people. And man, I just, you know, that's yeah, I'll get off my horse on this. Linda, you raised your hands. Linda? No? Okay.
Yeah, if I may contribute, just thinking about the brother with the long COVID. I had COVID only for 7 weeks at the start of the year, alhamdulillah. And I was terrified that it was going to become long COVID and just not end. And I have a friend in Scotland who you've met before, who was at the wedding with the kilt and so on. Pete, he's had long COVID now for a year or so, and it's really debilitating. What I found was the way to frame it for myself was that, because it's so frustrating when it's a neurological thing, you can't really kind of clock on and get things going, and incredibly frustrating when you can't sort of make the things in your life work as you planned, and also quite hopeless because you feel like there's no point to this suffering, or no point to this like this inertia. There's no one who's benefiting from it. And I think there's two ways to look at it, which internally helped me to deal with it. One is that although internally you might feel like it's all a complete waste, I have found that when Pete was really going through it, that increased my gratitude. So sometimes something can be happening where actually the purpose of it is to provide help for other people. And I've seen that a lot in terms of suffering in the individual. I mean, you can look at it on a global scale in terms of the suffering of a few tens of thousands of people has this amplifying effect that it increases the gratitude of millions. And so that's the kind of way that you could sort of form a concept of how Allah is still working in ways that you don't quite understand, and that it's actually still all part of the plan. And the other thing was just that I remember I had this feeling one time that, you know, again, back to the metaphor of theater, and that if all of existence is a theater of sorts with and we're all actors playing our parts, and it's about beauty and creation and so on. Sometimes, by definition, you can't have everybody on the stage all at once. You need to have some actors off stage. You don't want to have them on stage and cooking their meals and, you know, this kind of thing, because it would ruin the play. And I also found it helpful to consider my being taken out of active service to the world was actually maybe that's necessary. Maybe I just need to be out of the picture for a while and let the rest of the world carry on. So I just wanted to mention that. Maybe that also helps.
Thank you very much, Nick. Linda, yes, walaikum salam.
How are you? Good to see
Very
you,
well.
Sheikh.
Likewise, thank you. How are you?
Thank you for giving us that time. It's really good. Really appreciate it. SubhanAllah, Sheikh, what about when you just have that feeling that you've been running like a horse and even your body can't follow? So, you know, the surrender part you were talking about, I really think of the white flag, and you just kind of really, your heart is starting to detach more and more and more every day. But I really think it's a process. I started that journey 3 years ago in South Africa and with Yusuf. And 3 years after, I can only say that I'm really asking Allah to give me that strength to detach from things, because basically the more you detach, the more you really, really see things differently. But what I'm trying to say as well is that my body is saying, I can't anyway. I can't. Even if I wanted to, you know, sometimes we put that pressure on us, but the body is just not following. So I think that when you detach, there is something special happening, but it's really working on that detachment. That's really hard, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. All right, folks, I'm going to go to the next question, which is from Asad, my son. And this then stimulated your question, Nick. And I think we're going to run out of time. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to get to all of it. But then maybe we'll do another one and see what was inadequately dealt with, and we'll deal with it again. So, Asad was saying, Assalamu alaikum. I've been wanting to pose a question regarding belief. From one point of view, belief presents itself as binary of either accepting or rejecting a proposition. From this point of view, the line between belief and kufr is very sharp. Do you believe in Allah and His Messenger? The answer is either yes or no. This can't be the whole answer to belief, though, because this sharpness doesn't communicate the degrees to which we regularly talk about the degrees of Iman or faith. I suppose that there are differing degrees of certainty and conviction in relation to one's assent to the proposition. This also has a connection to one's lived experience, particularly regarding gratitude and trust. I would appreciate an exploration of this topic, though. I still would struggle to grasp firmly what conviction entails and how, for example, the Iman of the Sahaba or the saints is qualitatively different from the average person's Iman. I suppose a question associated with this is, what is the content of faith and what is included in faith which determines the degree of it? So, let's start off with exploring this matter from the point of view of the proposition that Allah is outwardly manifest and inwardly hidden. And if we say He is outwardly manifest, what is presented to you in the world that you see is His majesty, His vastness and His greatness. And it is an experience of nature and of existence and of the truth, which is by definition concerned with that which is separate and that which is removed. It is, from that point of view, Allah is if He's the greatest, that means that all other phenomena are within Him. And by definition, that which is the greatest is not perceptible. So, if you say, as a metaphor, you're dealing with a mountain, but you're very close to the mountain. You can't see the edges of the mountain when you're looking at a bush or an animal or a rock on the mountain. Eventually, if you didn't ever see the outline of the mountain, that groundwork of the base of the mountain has no meaning for you. It's just the ground that the thing stands on. It is because things have boundaries that we perceive them. But that which is referred to as the greatest, by definition, doesn't admit of boundaries. All boundaries are within His nature. And He's beyond those boundaries, which makes Him outwardly non-demonstrable and unperceptible. You only get a perception of Him being there by His footprints, by the obvious intelligence to the design that you witness when you look at the world. So when you look at a tree, it strikes you as bizarre that these Darwinians can say that this thing happened like the roll of a dice. It strikes you as being like an inconceivable idea, because there's clearly a sense of design, there's clearly a sense of intelligence in the world that you're in, and you do get a sense that intelligence is alive and constantly working. So, outwardly, because He's the greatest, because He is that which supersedes all, He's also beyond what we can perceive, He's therefore by definition absolutely removed, absolutely alien, completely different, out there, imperceptible, only perceptible not by Him but by His attributes, by His footprints, his fingerprints on the creation. Inwardly, however, if you get quiet, you discover that He is, again, the phrase is closer to you than your jugular vein. As soon as you allow your attention to fall back from being dedicated to the outward, you allow your attention to go deep and inward, you discover a depth and a quietude which is obviously of him. It's his presence. But it is not something that you can articulate. It is not something, it's so in that sense, it's perceptible because you can feel it. But it's not perceptible like anything else is perceptible. It's almost like, it's like an experience which is stripped of stimuli, stripped of content. So, when you say, I believe in Allah, and you're referring to your experience of the outward world, then your belief is an assertion of literally that, of belief. I cannot demonstrate him, because how do you demonstrate something which is so big, everything is within it? I believe. However, there is this thing of yaqeen, conviction, certitude. That certitude comes not because you keep on seeing his signs in the world. I'm not suggesting you don't. That certitude comes when you discover his proximity inside yourself. When you know that one night, that tahajjud, in the corner of your room, when suddenly everything went quiet and you could not come out of that sajda, and you felt this extraordinary peace and presence. That thing is, for me, that's another way of looking at the issue of faith. But maybe the word faith is not a useful word for that phenomenon, because that phenomenon is no longer about believing. That phenomenon is about certitude. It's about experience, experiencing his closeness. And we have access to that experience. Every human being alive has access to the experience. So Carl Jung was once asked by somebody, do you believe in God? And Jung looked at the man and said, I don't believe in God. I know God. So there are these two, and they're not contradictory, because they're referring to different parts of our being. Outwardly, he is that which you have to, whose existence you have to assert as an article of faith, because you see his fingerprints in the world. Inwardly, it's a reality whose existence you can assert on the basis of first-hand experience, because you feel his proximity. Allah is outwardly manifest and inwardly hidden, is outwardly removed and is inwardly proximate. Outwardly, he's beyond the other side of the stars. Inwardly, he's closer to you than your jugular vein. So, I know Assad's not in this call, so I'm not going to solicit any challenge on this one. I'm just going to go straight on to Nick. So Nick, it was there were like three things in this question of yours. So well, I'm not three. I mean, I've put it onto 3 slides. And maybe I could have also edited it, but so I'll just go sort of down to here.
Although might I say that I think your answer to Assad there was amazing. There's so much in that. I'll definitely have to watch this back and spend a long time unpacking all of that, because I think that really covered sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that.
Oh, really? Yes. Okay. So I'll just read the question.
Pretty much, I think I'm coming at it from the same. It's the same thing.
I'm going to read all 3. All right, all 3 slides. And then if there's something that occurs to me while I'm talking, I'm very glad you said that, by the way, because I was very intimidated by this question. But I'm going to read all 3 slides, and when something occurs to me further to what I said already, I'll pick that up, if that's all right, Nick. Okay, so he would like to. You said you'd like to join Assad's question. and you'd like to hear the response. This thing of belief is perhaps at the core of your inquiry for the last decade, both outwardly and inwardly. I've come to the conclusion that there are few interpretations of belief in general. First of all, there's an epistemological interpretation. I believe that Thailand exists, but I've never seen it. Therefore, it is not knowledge, but a conditional assertion based on evidence. My belief that Thailand exists is less strong than my belief that England exists, because I've been to England. But I do believe that Thailand exists. This thing of outwardly, Allah being removed, that's Thailand. Inwardly, that's England. This implies that if a definitive threshold of acceptability exists, defined subjectively, but largely socially, but based on the evaluation of physical evidence. So what do you mean by that, Nick?
I mean, it's just material. It's just
okay.
We're only talking about provable material facts at that point. Yeah.
So just to come back to this issue of him being inwardly proximate, that is clearly not demonstrable. It can never become a material fact, because you cannot come and visit the behind of my eyes. So the depth of my inner subjective experience, the depth of my inwardness is permanently inaccessible to anybody else. It is how we are structured as beings, which is an interesting thing. It is not a jama'ah that knows Allah. It is the individual who knows Allah. To say there's a believing community is nonsense. To say maybe there's a community of believers, that's maybe a little bit more accurate. So this thing about the inner reality is non-demonstrable, actually, by objective criteria. It is purely by inward experience. So do I believe ex-metaphysical association? I'm not sure what the Maliki position is. Now, you see, this is kind of like, this is against almost venturing into the realm of good people, which makes me nervous. I mean, anybody who says, do I... so, what is his name? Very famous sheikh, his name escapes me now, but one of the early transmitters of everything that happened in North Africa, Abu Madjan. One of his favorite sayings was, "Bring me fresh meat." And what he basically was saying is, don't come and tell me what somebody said in a book. What have you experienced? What do you know? And as people on this path, that's what we're interested in. We're interested in first-hand experience, not, this person narrated from this person, narrated from this person, and from Imam Malik, from this, that's not our engagement. I'm not even suggesting that there isn't a place for that. The perfectly legitimate place, now people should be doing that, but that's not our business. This implies that belief in no way is a subjective affair, but entirely dedicated to outside parameters. In other words, there's a criterion list and check. I just don't think that that's a useful way of looking at the issue of belief. Social, I'm Catholic and we live in Northern Ireland, so of course I believe in this transubstantiation. I believe whatever the opposite of what the Protestant bastards. Similar to two, but largely performative. Much social power can be won by appearing to have the conviction in certain assertions, and there is an inverse relationship between believability of the assertion and the perceived devoutness of the believer. Right. In some circles, it is tacitly accepted that the thing is not true, but we need to announce that exactly like. There's no way the Trinity makes sense, but it is true. And, and we know that we are good believers because we affirm this strange idea. It strikes me that the belief is generally used in the first sense, something epistemological, rather than knowledge or faith. But you see, yeah. Faith is therefore usually used as interchangeable with hope in the absence of conviction. Right. I would assert that when one puts tasawwuf first, things become centered on an experiential reality. Yes, agreed. Which reduces all three of the above categories to meaningless chatter. Agreed. Therefore, I have a materialist epistemological belief that the practices of tasawwuf allow me a greater opportunity to perceive things as they are. Agreed, but also an experiential belief in its veracity, which is to a large extent subjective. It has to be, because it is only the human heart that carries conviction, which is on the inside. But I'd like to explore a little bit this thing about this thing about hope, hope in the absence of conviction.
This is also a language. It's a poverty of language in a way, and in some respects, I think that, obviously, me coming to this, talking about belief, I mean, the whole thing is based on the English language, whereas obviously in Arabic, if you have yaqeen and you have other, these separations have already been made. So this is largely my own problem of coming to it from.
I mean, we are all coming at this problem from basically a Western, at least a Western educated mind. So I think it's important to explore this. So we go to this idea in the first instance that the antonym of iman is kufr. And Allah describes kufr in Quran not just as not believing, it also describes it as ingratitude. I mean, how often does he not condemn people in Quran for their ingratitude, for their stiff-neckedness, because they do not accept and realize what they've been given, for their ingratitude. And we've spoken about this before. Gratitude looks past. And gratitude means you acknowledge that you've received in excess of your due. And it is because you know that you. Now, this, by the way, is not a speculative idea. This is perfectly demonstrable. I just spoke about it again last night. If more had gone wrong than gone right to make you possible now, you would now be dead. It is, you are, no matter how challenged you are, no matter how ill you are, no matter how broken you think you are as a being, insofar as you are, by definition, an overwhelming number of things have gone right rather than gone wrong. What does he say? Which of the mercies of your Lord are you going to deny? I mean, so not to look at the past in a spirit of gratitude is to do violence to the truth. It is an irrational thing to do. To look at the world in the spirit of resentment, ingratitude, and victimhood as an irrational thing to do. It is a subjective thing, as opposed to object. It is a non-objective thing to do. You are not taking the reality into account. It's physically impossible for you to be alive if infinitely more things haven't gone right than have gone wrong. Which basically means to say, you are facing an existence which is favorably disposed towards you, and which is intelligently disposed towards you. That allows you to look forward in a spirit of trust. If things have gone right in the past, they are likely to go right in the future. And even if they go wrong, I realize that just like The going wrong has been a subset of things in the past, so it'll be a subset in the future, and it is part of my journey. And I really like your metaphor of being allowed to go off stage for a while, you know, allowed to disappear for a while, step back from the world. I think that Iman has two components. It is gratitude and trust, not just trust. And they're causally linked. Just like kufr has two components, ingratitude, resentment, and distrust. Or even worse, not distrust, because if I distrust you, I mean, I recognize that you have a will that can harm me. But if I don't even ascribe a will to you, and this is purely arbitrary, you know, it's all just random, then that's kind of like, it's hopelessness squared. No. Right, Nick, so we've got another one. I also hold a materialist epistemological belief that frameworks of belief built by the human mind have a power to create one's subjective reality. We may say the power of creation is bestowed upon man as vice regents of the divine. This is true, and this is what language does. It has turned us into naming beings. That being naming beings is both our highest achievement. It's also our worst affliction, you know, because it creates this thing of this commentary that we have on life on an ongoing basis. And also, what we now know is that as you describe the world, so the world manifests to you. The world is a product of your narrative of it. Similarly, the recent field of neurotheology, which uses I'm completely out of my depth here, Nick. I have no idea of any of this stuff. This neurotheology using MRI scanners to examine the neurological response of those in deep meditation. I'm out. I don't know about this. Maybe you can help us here.
Yeah, I mean, basically, this something I've in the last couple of years noticed that they started using the technology in this way to see is there actually something happening when a Buddhist monk, for example, is in deep meditation, or is this just, you know, are they just saying that they're experiencing these things? And I think the only take-home thing from the experiments in Broad is that, you know, yes, there's clearly brain activity happening in people who are in these states that is observably different from people who are not in those states. So, I mean, that's just me sort of noting that, you know, previously that would have the whole concept of faith would have to be taken on trust, really, to say, you know, like essentially what we've got now is certainly from the Jungian perspective, and I think when you said Carl Jung, when talking about the question from Assad there, I think that really summed up the whole thing, because that is the type of belief that I think we're talking about, and these other types of belief maybe are different words, but in our context, you know, this experiential thing, not only is it subjectively true, but it seems to be increasingly objectively true because we can see it scientifically as well. So, but then, yeah, and I think that's that for me is a kind of tick to say, like, well, clearly there is something going on here, which is allows me to put trust in the fact that you know that's a genuine phenomenon and hopefully achievable for the individual.
And that last paragraph, I actually think that talks pretty much to the thing that I already discussed with in answering Assad, or am I wrong?
No, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Well, folks, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I will keep it going for a few more minutes. If there's anything else anybody would like to explore, please.
So just as a last thing there,
please.
I would say, yeah, I mean, my takeaway from this conversation is, firstly, that I really want to look into, I mean, yeah, everything that I said there was basically my approach of thinking about these things, but the way that you approach things and the way that you frame things, and it's based on your experience of having, as you say, not just your life of internal practice, but also the fact that you've met so many people who've also been on this path. And I think it is that thing of, as you said, fresh meat, when you speak to somebody face to face and they talk about their experiences, somehow there's a kind of transmission there, which is different from what you get from a book or what you get from an abstract concept. Because when you're speaking to a person, and they're explaining how these things have affected their life, it's a communication of the heart almost. So yeah, so for me, it's about deepening my connection with the tradition and understanding it, not just as an outside observer, but more from the inside, which is, of course, what you're all doing at the Zawia. So thank you again for doing what you do.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's very generous. So Anna, Linda, your hand was up first.
Can I have a last question? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yesterday, subhanAllah, when you did the audio, there was something you said, like, in terms of healing, that's it. There is a phase where you actually have to say to someone, that's it. Let's just go out there and do what we're supposed to be doing again. And I'm doing that. But my question is, I am crying a lot and a lot and a lot. And I'm thinking, and I'm doing my mission, but and I do my decode and weird, and I really listen to you a lot as well. But my question is, I really don't like that part of me as well, that sometimes can be very vulnerable, and I feel inside my heart that I'm healing. So I don't think it's a depression while in the bed, no, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But I do cry a lot. And my question is it a woman thing, this thing, or is it just because I'm healing through?
You do cry a lot.
Whatever happened.
What do you say? I can't hear you properly.
I do cry a lot. I do cry a lot. Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's subhanallah. I do the mission that I'm doing. That's it. Yesterday when you were talking in the dance, where you actually have to have a point in your life where you actually say, "Come on, just do what you're supposed to be doing." Healing is happening. You can't stay there forever, kind of. I'm doing my mission and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but I'm crying a lot, and I don't like that part. I don't do it in front of people. It's just my vulnerable part. And my question is, I feel inside that I am healing, but yeah, I wanted to ask you. I mean, is that because when I heard you yesterday in your talk, I was thinking, yeah, just get a grip, stop doing that. I was really judging myself, but yeah, I want to know what's your opinion.
Thank you for asking, because it's not my intention. I'm not saying don't weep. There are two kinds of tears. The tears of injury, of outrage, of self-pity, and there are tears of gratitude. Tears of gratitude are the most beautiful diamonds that Allah has created. So this is not about hardening your heart. This is about incrementally being moved, not by the injury that's been done to you, but by the mercy that's been given to you. So don't stop crying, but find better reasons to cry about.
Thank you. And it is gratitude for most of the time. So yeah, I'm good.
Well, there you go. There's not, That's the most wonderful thing. It's a great treasure. Tears of gratitude are the most beautiful things that Allah has created. Thank you, Linda. Amina, you have your hand up.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum
thank you for the session. My question, I was in discussion today with my husband, and we were talking about the role of shaitan in Islam. Just that's the question. Is that nafs? Is shaitan the waswas, as we call it? If you could just clarify, because I didn't manage to explain it very well to him. So if you could explain it, he's sitting here with me anyway, so he can hear.
Well, first of all, yes, shaitan is the waswas. Shaitan is it's the principle of predation that has been injected to us that basically says, I have to get from the world what I want because there isn't a guardian lord in charge of me. I have to pursue my self-interest. I have to dominate, brutalize, and force my way because otherwise I won't get what I require. So that program that we have, that is shaitanic, and all the thoughts that are associated with that, and they're many-layered and they're complex, that's all from shaitan. And it is problematic, obviously, causes us much suffering. But I'd like you to consider, was him leading us astray, even as described in the Quran? You remember when he was asked to bow to man and he refused, and then Allah said, he'll banish him, and then he said, yeah, but give me leave to lead them astray. Leave was given. Leave was given. He doesn't do this to us without Allah's permission. This is part of the story. And the story is that we affirmed at the beginning of time when we were asked, am I not your Rabb? We said, yes, you're our Rabb. But now we kind of forget that. We think, no, I don't have a Rabb. I've got to look after myself. I've got to start managing my own affairs. So we get lost and we get confused. But the purpose of getting lost and confused is so that we can rediscover. You know, so in that sense, you know, a lot. I mean, there's an element to which actually shaitan has been an ally in producing this peculiarly human phenomenon of lostness, of confusion, of flying in the face of what is obvious, that I have a Rabb. Like, I mean, look how things are. That's part of this. But why has that happened? So that we can rediscover, because we know that he said he only created because he longed to be known, and he created because he wished to be, basically because he created existence in worship of him, because he wanted to be known. Now, when you think about a stupendous thing that you've experienced, that was like an overwhelming experience that you'd not experienced it before. Maybe the first time you saw the sea, particularly if you're an adult and you'd never gone near to the sea. I mean, I know people are like that. And they're thunderstruck when they say, or the first time you saw the Kaaba. It's an absolute, you're thunderstruck by your experience, you know? And you're only thunderstruck by the experience because you're seeing it for the first time. I mean, because you, so in other words, it's you only affirm how extraordinary this thing is because you've been removed from it for a while. People who live around the Kaaba, they just carry on with their lives. Eventually, it's just another stone block there in the middle of the city. I mean, it's part of day-to-day life. People who have never seen a mountain before are astonished by what they see. But if you're living around mountains the whole time, this is part of your day-to-day experience. Years ago, we had two young men from Singapore came to stay for a while in the Zawia, and they'd only lived in Singapore. And Singapore's, you know, I mean, I mean, you don't see the sky in Singapore because you're either in buildings or the rest of it is rainforest, basically. So they were here for a few days, and I took them on a long drive into the west of the country, which is vast open spaces, like big sky country. And these two young men kept saying, wow, wow. Why? Because they saw it for the first time. So we can only affirm, truly affirm, with astonishment and with real conviction, the stupendousness of his nature, because we forgot it. Getting lost is part of the process. Getting lost is part of the process of being human. We have been designed to become lost. It is part of the very first decree that was evolved with us right from the start. It is by agreement, you will lead them astray. You will make them lost so that they can rediscover me. I mean, a bit more of a technical discussion of this. I mean, and then I'll shut up. I hope I'm not boring you, but it's one of my favorite subjects.
No, it's very good. It's very clear.
I mean, it's, you know, if you strip down experience to the bare essentials, if we put you as an individual observing human being in a place where you can observe things as they are, like on top of a mountain, and you see the vista of what you kind of things as they are, you know, the grandness of it, or you're in the desert on a moonless night without clouds, it's just the stars, the unbelievable sense of vastness and depth. That experience produces in you the unique human experience of awe. Awe is actually what it means to be worshipful. Worshipfulness is about awe. And this fundamental structure of awe is that it's a small being apprehending that which is overwhelmingly, breathtakingly vast. But there's two ways that which is very small can experience that which is overwhelming and breathtakingly vast. It's either awe or it's terror. Now, because obviously that which is vast is overwhelming, so it's going to overwhelm you. And the difference between the two is that the person who's looking at the world in awe is assuming that vastness they're looking into is not hostile to them, it's their benefactor and their ally. So I can afford not to shrink with terror. So we've got these two ways of being. It's either a way of being of awe or a way of being of terror. The difference between the two is a choice. Because awe is only awe when the small one chooses to be in awe. If the awe was compelled from you, you know, you have to be in awe, then basically that's clearly not awe, that's terror. So your ability to choose is your ability to be in a state of awe is what your ability to choose produces the possibility of awe. If you couldn't choose, you couldn't have awe, you could only have terror. Choice means that there's right and there's wrong, there's left and there's right, there's dark and there's light. It means an introduction of left, of dark, of wrong, of fallenness, of brokenness. So without the injection of that dark element, the lower element, awe would not be possible. Our worship would be exactly the same thing as the worship of the angels. The angels have no choice. They have to worship. Their worship is actually, it's like a terror. It's like, it's compelled from them. What makes us, we are such extraordinary beings. What makes us really special is that he has given us free will. He has given us the ability to choose awe. But in order for us to be able to choose awe, to have free will, he has to then also give us the choice to negate, to do the opposite. So in that sense, the one who led us astray is also the one that enabled us the highest faculty that we have and produced us as the unique beings that can uniquely affirm the wonder and extraordinary nature of the Ram. So in that sense, maybe Shaitan gets a little bit of a rough rap, and we don't have to give him so much attention. You know, I mean, it's the point is not Shaitan. What he's done to us is by permission. The point is Allah. Go back to the source.
Jazakallah khair. Perfect. Thank you.
Folks, I want to wrap it up, folks. Thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
السلام عليكم شيخ جزاك الله خير.
Salam, Sri Abdullah.